Hi everyone, Jennifer here, back with another edition of TV Talk. It's Monday, and that means it's Gargoyles Day. And this week's episode was Avalon Part 2. While Tom, Katherine, and the Magus get Goliath and Elisa caught up in what has been happening on Avalon, their adversary begins his journey to the to set in place events that have happened in the past and get his past self up to speed on what the plan of action is. Okay, things I liked about this episode. Really, again, like its predecessor, I loved everything about this episode. This has to be one of my favorite arcs in Gargoyles. And I know there's not a lot of arcs. Well, I guess you could say some of them are arcs, but basically like part arcs like this one and Awakening and City of Stone, not really a lot, but you know, there are a few. And this is probably one of my favorites. This is also the second part of the 3-part episode that launches what I like to call the Avalon journeys. And we'll get more into that later on, I promise. Now, in this episode, we are reintroduced to Katherine and the Magus, their older selves, as we were introduced to Tom's older self in the last episode. We are also introduced to the clan's children. There were, I believe, 32 eggs in the rookery, and I believe all of them hatched. I believe they would have said otherwise if they wouldn't. So there is a clan of 32 gargoyles living on Avalon with 3 humans. And all of the gargoyles have names. We're actually introduced to 3 of them. Boudica, Gabriel, and Angela. And I know some of you may have noticed something about Angela, and yes, we will talk about that when it becomes appropriate. It is spoiler. Now there are others, and there's like one other that is given a name, but I don't think it's mentioned in this episode. But again, like the last episode, this one is backstory, and it is the backstory of, I believe he's called the Archmage, or, you know, I forget his name, but he was the one who Goliath, Demona, and Hudson in the flashbacks of Long Way Till Morning had to track down to find the cure for Katherine's father. And actually, his journey to catch his younger self up starts, you know, right where we last see him in that episode. And this episode is where he goes back. He uses the Phoenix Gate to go back in time to that point and catches his younger self up on what is going on to this point and gives him the information and knowledge he needs. And whatnot. It also explains why he's interested in Avalon and why the Weird Sisters cast the spell on Demona and Macbeth in the flashbacks we saw in City of Stone. So this really ties a lot of those loose ends together quite nicely, actually. So we understand the influence, like why the Weird Sisters were so invested in getting the Grimorum and the Phoenix Gate and the Eye of Odin, why they cast the spell on Demona and Macbeth in the first place, and why they are so interested in them. So, like I said, this episode really ties up a lot of those loose ends. Okay, things I didn't like about this episode. There really wasn't a lot I didn't like about this episode. I will admit I didn't like how it focused on the main villain of this particular arc, but then again, we needed to understand how he got to that point, like what happened. Because the last time we saw him, he was falling into a crevasse, and we all, including the characters in the series at that point, thought he was dead. And turns out he's not. I mean, that's one of the first questions that's addressed in the last episode was, you know, how could this person still be alive? He died before Tom was born. He died before Goliath became leader. When he supposedly died, Goliath was still only second in command to Hudson. So this episode really explains a lot about that, and you need to understand not necessarily the why the Weird Sisters put the spell on Demona and Macbeth, because that's kind of not all that important. I mean, it is, but it isn't. But how he's still alive and how he got his hands on the Phoenix Gate and the Eye of Odin. So, again, this episode does a really good job of that. And it's also very important that we understand that, because when we get into the next and third and final part of this episode, all of that will be important, I promise. And we will talk about that in next week's episode. Or in the next Gargoyles video, I promise. Okay, feel free to leave your comments and questions in the comments section. I do love to read those. Please like and share this video if you're watching on Facebook, or like and subscribe if you haven't already if you're watching on YouTube. And feel free to follow me on Wattpad, Tumblr, Instagram, and Twitter. I do have my name for those 4 sites right there on the screen, as well as the pictures I use for the icons. Please note that all pictures seen within this video do belong to their respected artists. I own absolutely nothing. And the links for those 4 sites that I mentioned will be in the description section if that makes it any easier for you guys to locate me. Okay, quick reminder on my comment rules. Okay, feel free to check out my other gargoyle videos. My other TV talk videos. And my other videos. Okay, before we sign off, a couple of things I'd like to touch on. First off, YouTube subscribers. Any of my videos that cannot be found on YouTube are on my Facebook page. The link will be in the description section. Facebook friends. Basically the same deal. Any of my videos that cannot be found on Facebook are on my YouTube channel. The link will be in the description section. And for anyone who's interested, you can feel free to check out my Facebook group, Fanfic Corner. The link for that will be in the description section as well. Excuse me. Okay, finally, DreamWorks Dragons will be coming to an end in March, and that means there will be an opening for a new TV Talk series for Sunday. That also means that you guys get to vote and tell me what show you would like me to do a new TV Talk series on for Sunday. Your choices are Horseland, Outlaw Star, Dot Hack Sign, and Inuyasha. Voting is extremely simple. All you have to do is write down a positive comment on one of the 4 shows listed, and or like or love a positive comment on one of the 4 shows listed, and whichever one gets the most votes is the one I'll do a video on, or a series of videos on. Please keep in mind that negative comments and dislikes do not count as votes, and yes, if I can find it and Inuyasha is chosen, once I'm done with that, I will do the sequel. Voting will be until the 5th of March, but if I have to push the date back, I will let you know. You may vote as many times as you wish, but please keep in mind that in the event of a tie or no votes, I do have the final say. So far, the votes stand at 1 vote for Horseland, but you guys have about 3.5 months, I would guess, left to get your votes in and make your voices known. Okay, as always, thank you for watching, and have a very nice day.